time opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Hooked on a feeling. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Anatomy of a Movie. And by that music, you guessed it, we're doing Guardians of the Galaxy. Sarah, go ahead, sing.
I'm not gonna sing, but I'll dance. No, I was probably annoying. I went and I saw this with a friend, and literally the whole time, every time I saw him come on, I'd like take their shoulder and just be like, like I was just dancing, and I do not think they were very happy with me.
Yeah, I'm gonna be
happy. It kept happening the whole movie.
During the podcast, fine. If somebody was doing that to a movie, I'd get your dirty paws off me.
You
Watch the movie. You damn dirty ape.
Well, this is Anatomy of a Movie. We are doing Guardians of the Galaxy by James Gunn, starring Chris Pratt, and of course we have Demetri.
Hello, movie fans. I am Groot.
Demetri now has a Twitter.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
So we'll promote it right at the, it's what D movies
instead of B movies, D movies, and then it's also Demetri, and then 1701. I had to get the Star Trek thing in there.
Got it.
The registration of the USS Enterprise. So D movies at D movies 1701.
All right, we're still waiting on official Twitter from the Sara Stretton.
Yeah, you'll be waiting a while. I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Fair enough. I'm Phil Svitek, and today in the booth from the Schmoes Know, we have Josh, the engineer. Josh, say hi.
What's up, everybody?
Yo, Josh.
In Marissa's absence, Josh, the engineer, has taken over for that position in the booth. He might be here if you were working with the Schmoes a little bit more. So, the Schmoes Know movies. And so Josh is going to bring in his opinion about Guardians of the Galaxy as well.
Nice.
But let's begin with overall impressions. There's so much to talk about. And one of the things that I will tease that we will definitely talk about is what really worked with this movie is that the appeal of people's nostalgia.
Yes.
Showcased by Sarah nudging the person next to her and wanting to dance every 2 minutes.
We'll talk about that because very important. James Gunn was very conscious and it was very done on purpose. So yeah it's great.
Let's start with you, Sarah.
First. I think that I normally find the fun in comic book movies in the action. And in this movie, so much of the fun was in the music and in the comedy and in the characters themselves. And I'm a huge comic book movie fan in general. So I'm like pumped about like I think there's like something like 16, 19 comic book movies coming out before 2020 at this point. But this one is fantastic. I was so excited, so much fun, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Dimitri?
Yeah, for me, Guardians of the Galaxy, I was introduced to the comic, I'm going to say within the past 5 years. A friend of mine had a friend worked at a comic book store, and one day he's like, dude, you have to check this out. And he flopped the graphic novel down in front of me. He's like, there's a character, Rocket Raccoon. He goes, you are going to laugh your ass off reading this book. Plus, it's in your wheelhouse of science fiction. He goes, it's great. The characters are great. And I took his word. He knows comics like nobody's business. I read it, and I'm like, God, this was a great... It was a great graphic novel. And then when I found out they're turning it into a movie, my first thought was, how are they going to do that? How are they going to pull it off? Guardians of the Galaxy, before the movie came out, let's face it, they were at the very least B minus C tier. Like, it wasn't a top-selling comic book. And so my first thought was, how do they pull this off? Then the marketing hit, and I'm like going, that's how they're going to pull this off. I thought the marketing was spectacular, had me hooked on a feeling, and I went into the movie, and man, what a breath of fresh air as far as this is a great summer movie. It turns out to be a very good superhero movie in a sense. I love the tack that it's still within this Marvel universe, but a little bit on the outside fringe. We're introduced to new characters. I loved the levity and just everything about it. Right now, as summer pictures go, this one gets my top nod as most fun at the movies this summer. Doesn't mean things like X-Men aren't great movies, but this I had a great time.
What I see for me in terms of movies that I like and a trend that's sort of happening, if something used to be serious, people are making it a little bit funny and giving that new perspective, and I like that. Or if it used to be funny, they're adding a darker tone to it. Sure. So I like that, and I think this is... I'm not familiar with the comics at all. And ironically, it's, even though they've been comics and there's a slight history to it, I feel like this is one of the biggest movies that people have been excited for, that they've had no idea what the hell it was going to be.
Sure.
I really feel that, but they were just so excited. Whatever this is, they're in for it. And, the good thing is it's certainly delivered from start to finish. I didn't really know the premise, within the first... as soon as they go to jail, I was like, oh, they're misfits and they're bandits? Oh, I didn't know that. Cool. I thought they were actually like actual Guardians of a Galaxy.
Yeah. You thought we were starting with the team intact.
Yeah. I had no idea. But again, it's one of those things that right from the get-go, you just kind of get behind. Even the opening sequence, you're like, what? How is this going to tie into anything?
Right. And it
does.
It ties in so wonderfully. I mean... Yeah, it's great. And to your point about levity, and it's so much fun. Listen, Marvel to me, or at least this Marvel universe, Iron Man, the Captain America, Thor, Hulk, the Avengers, this universe that they've created that has cross-sectioned and all, they have done an amazing job. And Guardians is now, sort of kind of crowbarring its way in there as well, because
they're labeling it, I believe, as stage 2.
We've had stage 2. We're going into, stage 3, I guess, will be with Avengers 2 coming out next summer. But what was great about Guardians is all the other movies that I just mentioned, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, all those standalone movies, and even the Avengers, while they had levity in them, and there are parts that you can laugh at, they were more taken a little bit serious, and that's how you draw. You don't make it cartoonish, comic bookish. You got to get the adults in there, and Peter Gunn has said this, and I've said this a lot in the show as well, is that Marvel took a big risk on Iron Man, and Iron Man, and again, he was not a Spider-Man. He was like a B-tier comic book hero. When Iron Man became such the success, and Robert Downey Jr. really shot him to the stratosphere, and he's so great at it. And he's fun, but the movies still have a little bit of a serious tone in it. This movie's a breath of fresh air because it sort of kind of flips that. It goes for the fun first, and then we're going to go with the sentimental. We'll tug on heartstrings. We'll make, the stakes of, this planet is in peril, and our band of heroes have to do this. It's not an origin story, in a sense. These people already exist. Like, we're not getting them. The only thing we're getting them is thrown together, but we don't know the origins of Rocket and Groot
besides like one line here or there to kind of give you a basis of what you're.
But you don't know if it's true or not either. That's what I love. How many times I've escaped so many prisons and this and you're like that. Well, that could be true, but also the way he's acting, that could be the biggest lie of his life. That could come back and like, hey, I've never done this.
I'm too gullible. I'm like, yeah, I believe you. I believe everything you say.
But it's sort of refreshing.
Well, I didn't believe, even Gamora. I didn't.
Gamora.
Up until a certain point, I was like, is she a double agent? What is going on?
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that's what led, for me, it was a breath of fresh air, because this isn't your typical origin story. This isn't how Star-Lord became Star-Lord. He was already calling himself Star-Lord, so in getting these people together, it was just a great fun ride that had spectacular special effects, great pacing.
Speaking of the character buildup of each of the individuals, how they kind of tackled each one and didn't really make it just about Star-Lord. They spread it out, and they spread the love to each of the characters, which was so important to me.
Everybody got their day in the sun, or
Exactly.
stars, so to speak.
In speaking of the origin story, I really love the origin story of how this movie came to be. Did you guys get a chance to read up fully up on that story?
About Peter Gunn and how he got involved, or he almost didn't get involved, and all that fun stuff.
But even before that,
go ahead.
I don't have her name in front of me, but it was basically like, you know, pick your poison type of deal, right? Here's all these secondary comics. You pick one that you want to work on, and she did. And
Nicole Perlman.
Yes,
you're talking. Yeah,
and she did, and I forget the full explanation, but it was something about like, oh, it was just cool female. It was a cool female character. And it just spawned off of this.
Well, yeah, and
That is
again,
such
it's not your
a
typical
strange starting point for where it ended up.
Well, what's great about her thoughts, you know, because for her, you know, comic book movies, a lot of movies, action movies, to her, depressingly male-centric. Guardians, for her, is a turning point. Nicole Perlman, she did write the initial draft and gets co-writing credit with Gunn, but according to Saldana, the initial draft featured far less substantial roles for women than Gunn's revised version, and the latter was what convinced her to sign on and continue. And with that, and again, fantastic, because the women in this movie, they're strong, they have a heart, they're good characters. I thought, I felt
like there was only one strong woman character.
You know, but that, again, I'm going to say Zoe Saldana is a good role model. I mean, you can take her sister.
But I don't feel like that's really anything new. I feel like we often see at least one strong.
But here's the thing: it also didn't play to the cliches of. I mean, when you know he finally puts the headphones on her and he's playing the awesome mixtape #1.
Yeah.
It you know, she immediately says like, Don't seduce me with your pelvic thrusting magic.
No, I thought she was great, and I did like that ferocity she had with her, and that she wasn't swayed by him so easily as like the other girls that he had obviously slept with. But I just think that's an interesting perspective, that what triggered her interest was that character, because I think if you look at like other movies, there's tons of strong female characters, and they only have one in here, and there's 5 strong male characters. To me, that doesn't balance out, and that's a weird starting point. If it was like, if the proportions were different, I would understand that inspiration.
Yeah, but okay, here's my deal. Name the movie that has 5 strong characters in it, female characters.
I'm not saying that, but I can name a lot that
Now
have
and then.
one.
No,
Now and then, boom, win.
Is that a comic book movie?
Okay, you didn't see 8. I didn't know the stipulations.
I'm sorry, but you know, and as far as Zoe Saldana's character goes, they didn't play to the stereotypical like alien. Again, you didn't know whether or not she could have been the bad, you know, the villainess, or she could have come in as a double agent. But again, this is a character that is played for, like, the only way you're going to sympathize with her is as the movie's going along, you sort of kind of watch her defenses sort of kind of come down, but it's earned. Whatever relationship or feelings that she ends up having towards Quill, it's earned. It's not fake. It's, you know, and I really liked what Zoe did with this character as well. And I think she is, you know, I think sometimes Zoe Saldana, you know, because we can look at Star Trek. A lot of people said Zoe Saldana in Star Trek, you know, she doesn't contribute. I'm like, no, she contributes a lot. The first movie, she hones Spock in. She actually sort of kind of almost saves the day. She's the one that's able to decipher the Klingon thing. In the second one, she does save Kirk and everything. And in this movie, and of course, she's also an Avatar. She plays good, strong female characters.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying, is that I just recognize her in general as such a strong woman, that there's nothing in particular that stands her apart in this movie as opposed to the others. They all have admirable qualities. This was a good character. It was a fun character. But to me, as an inspiration point of why Guardians of the Galaxy, I just find it funny that that was this. Instead of, oh, the band of misfits that's a little different. That's what I would have presumed brought them into this field.
Well, it was just this writer in particular. And again, she goes on to say, I'm very intolerant of sexism and playing irrelevant female characters. You know, if I don't matter to the story, the saving of the day, then why the fuck am I here? And that's a great way, I think, that she approached going into this, because that character did have major impact.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and played a major key to the Guardians of the Galaxy. To the
She was the one actually fighting to save the world when she knew it was going on.
Yeah. So, you know, I appreciate, you know, what Nicole Perlman has. And again, when we're in comic books too, comic books in general can tend to be a little bit exploitive. This character, she fit her costume perfectly. She was, you know, and
I think knowing Zoe, not, you know, personally too well, but knowing her and having spoken to her, I feel like this is a role where, you know, you mentioned Avatar, you mentioned all Star Trek and all those, and, you know, she plays obviously amazing in those, but here I think she really lets a side of herself shine through. There's a great line when Maria Menounos interviewed her. You know, they had a real woman-to-woman talk about various things, and they actually did talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, but there was that one line of, like, just talking about the imposition of men on women, about, like, having kids and things like that, and she just her personality when she said, oh, give me a fucking break. You know what I mean? About all these things about that a woman has to be forced to do, and I thought with her in this role in particular, she shows a little bit of that kind of side to her, and I found it fun.
Yeah. And the chemistry, I think, in our group, I thought was amazing. You had, and that, you know, I think it's equally as good, although a little bit different than our, you know, our Avengers. Again, the Avengers movie, it again is sort of kind of an origin story when you break it down. It's how did these band of people who are not going to get along, they're sort of kind of forced to work together to solve this issue. Where in this one, it's like, okay, they may not get along, but the chemistry is a little bit lighter, and you can see how they can get along very easily, and I love that, right?
100%. And also, the chemistry they built around Rocket and around Groot, like, they became such foundation stones of how it would work and how they would succeed. I thought that balancing them was a feat. And, like, I mean, Groot has one line the entire film. He said, I mean, I think Vin Diesel said he recorded it over 1,000 times. And they had recorded it in, like, multiple languages. So he could, you know, they could do it all over the world and it be his voice. But I was just like, it was done so well, and how they would implement the little translations from Rocket so we would understand. And just the inflection, I thought that built out a really good foundation.
Okay, this is what I was thinking of. All right, number one, Groot is sort of kind of like our Chewbacca R2-D2. You know, Chewbacca has his growls, and you know, he has his growls, but yet Han Solo is able to understand what he says. And this is, you know, he says, I am Groot, and then Rocket's able to, from inflection, whatever, he understands him. Now, how awesome would it be? Because I was thinking about this as I was waiting for the button, the Marvel button at the end. I was thinking, wow, go to a cocktail party and get Groot and Hodor together. Oh, the conversation would just fly. I'm Groot, Hodor, I am Groot.
And then Chewbacca.
It would be awesome.
A movie, Evan. Exactly.
Speaking of Groot in particular and Vin Diesel, what I love the backstory. You know, Vin was, you know, on the fence about how to be able to do this with his busy schedule of Fast and Furious. Obviously, by only having 3 lines, although you have to record it multiple times, yes, that's, you know, but it's not as painstaking as, you know,
paying more to edit. How do you go through all of the that
actually is. But it was his kids that convinced him to do it, because, you know, he went to them, he's like, should I play Groot? And they're like, yes, Dad. I don't know. I feel think
like this is such a common story right now, maybe because we're doing so many, like, live action fairy tale movies, and we're doing so many comic book movies. There's constantly the kid pressure where parents are like, well, my kids love it. Well, my kids have seen the whole thing, so we're jumping on board. To be fair,
I don't think his kids actually know. I think he just showed him pictures of, the story goes, from Vin, he showed him pictures of, you know, Groot and things like that. They're too young to read the comics and even know what the heck is going on.
But they know, like, they're like, oh, a Marvel comic book movie.
Here's the thing, I've met his kids, and they're not, I don't think they're at the age where they put 2 and 2. I don't think they don't realize that their daddy is Mr. Fast and the Furious.
Okay.
Or Riddick.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so exactly. They're just like, oh yeah, they just saw a picture of a cool, like, tree thing, and it's like, yeah, definitely do that, Daddy. So
yeah, and
perfect.
And again, I mean, to Vin Diesel's credit, to the sound editor's credit, to the you're recording that many, and Peter Gunn, and it was funny. There was a great story where he would go, "I am Groot," and Peter Gunn, "That's great. Okay, one more time." I am Groot. Oh, awesome.
Enunciate
one more time.
the R a little harder on the T. It's a little more.
And they did. He said, "Yeah, it was painstaking." He goes, "Can't say I didn't have a good time," and he said that Gunn made it so fun for them to do. Yeah. But then picking the right inflection to put it into the scene, and then having them interact. It doesn't matter how many takes they took. It works. It doesn't matter.
Let's talk about Peter because every one of the actors that was on set, excluding Vin and Bradley, said that they couldn't have done the movie without him. He provided everything for them in order to where to look, how to interact, and he brought that chemistry that we've already been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Gunn too. Listen, this guy has cut his teeth. He started off in Trauma Pictures, Toxic Avenger. Okay, he actually wrote Romeo and Juliet. Okay, so it's almost like that's a rite of passage for many people. It's almost like working for Roger Corman back in the day, like a James Cameron did or Ron Howard. So when you're working on such low budget, you do a bunch of stuff, and he would work at Troma, and then he wanted to do TV and movies, and he ended up doing this movie, The Specials, and for me, I think his big break directorial wise, because he also wrote the remake of Dawn of the Dead, Zack Snyder's. That was the movie that sort of kind of started his acclaim to fame. But then he directed this great movie that I look at it as an homage to Night of the Creeps, great B sci-fi horror movie, and his movie was called Slither, which starred Nathan Fillion, and great fun movie that combined sarcasm, humor with gross out horror effects, and he handled it great. Didn't make waves at the box office. If you haven't seen it,
it's a fun movie.
It's a fun movie.
And there's a nod to it in this movie in The Collectors, I'm pretty sure. There's the slugs, and also he used Nathan Fillion, who has a cameo voiceover, and the gentleman at the beginning of the movie who plays Quill's grandfather is in Slither as well. So that movie to me is it's a fun movie. Right from there you go, okay, I can understand how an executive may have seen Slither and said, okay, he could do this if he wanted to. I know he went on to write like Scooby-Doo and everything. Hey, guys got to eat. I get it. No shame in that. But when you're thrown this bone, and he initially said no. He said he wanted to focus on TV. And then when he thought about it, he actually thought about the sequels to the movie first, more so than doing Guardians. He started off going, what can I do with these people in Guardians? Like, where do I take them in Guardians 2? And that got his juices flowing, and they banged out the script, and then he directed it, and God, he just hit. This is one of those movies where big commercial movie, so entertaining, and he hit every beat that was necessary to make this a hit, much like Iron Man. Like, I think that Marvel is like Pixar back in the day. When they were starting off, Pixar could do no wrong. Creatively, entertainment-wise, big box office. This, and as of yet, Guardians hasn't had their quote-unquote Cars 2, which, was many people say is a creative misstep for Pixar. They haven't had it yet in this universe. And I think that's just amazing. And to take characters that nobody knows about and get people, as you said, so excited. But also it was kind of smart, because part of me thinks that bringing out something that nobody knows about was part of the appeal. Because how many trailers did we see this year where you're like, okay, I've seen, it was a year of sequels. And this is that same feeling, that same world, but it's all new people.
I agreed.
So smart.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Disney, they had Captain America. They could trailer this on everything, and I think they did a great job. They did a great job conditioning the audience to who these people might be, and they used the music cues, which ended up being so integral to this movie. And their marketing on this movie. There's a reason why it did as much as it did, and it's the highest opening. Let's see, one of the highest opening August, and it was like $94 million. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we'll certainly talk. They're calling it the movie that saved the summer box office. But before I do want to talk about Chris in particular, our Star Lord.
Mr. Chris Pratt.
I wanted to because there was a lot of people ahead of him in line for the role. And it just worked out that he does. I read a few names, but does anyone have the full list by chance?
The full list of everyone who's I could find it. More of what I just thought was interesting is like there was a lot of. I remember when Chris Pratt was cast and there was backlash, and it seems like there was even backlash before where people didn't want to see him audition because he didn't do too well, I guess, in a G.I. Joe audition, and he wasn't your stereotypical, cut buff guy. And
not at the time.
Not at the time.
Absolutely.
Not at the time. I mean, he lost 60 pounds for this film, I'm pretty sure. He promised to lose 50 and ended up losing 60. Right. But he won them over, and it was one of those things where an assistant convinced them to watch his audition, and the director didn't even want to, and then within 30 seconds, he was like, oh, he has it. Even if he didn't lose the weight in time, even if he was in the shape he was in, he was going to give it to him just because he stole the show. And then
and he wasn't at that weight. And again, just hearing him and how he conducted himself, again, and you can see why. To me, Pratt brings to the role a little dash of Han Solo, a little dash of Mal Reynolds from Firefly, and then a little dash of Marty McFly.
Two of those were some of his inspirations.
And they would have had to have been. I mean, because you just see those characters. And in fact, I could almost swear that some dialogue Mal Reynolds, has said, I aim to misbehave. And he says, well, we're going to do a little bit of bad, a little bit of good, and a whole lot. I forget what the line is.
I think it's, are we going to do bad, or are we going to do good? It said a little bit of both or something.
Yeah, and I swear it almost comes from Firefly or Serenity. And then he adds Chris Pratt. The opening scene, if you're, okay, again, we'll talk about music. The opening scene when he's abducted, and then it cuts to so many years, and we're in space, we're on this planet, and then this guy has a cassette tape, a Walkman. But when he starts dancing, I was dying. I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like this, he's great. And like, how could you not get, and I forget what song it was, another 70s hit at the time. But it was such a great scene.
I refer to it as the lizard singing song. I don't know. I know they weren't lizards, but that's how I refer to it. It's the lizard singing.
Was that a great opening for that?
The boy version of singing into a hairbrush.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was great on multiple levels. One of the reasons why I liked it is because it also showed his change and what his arc would kind of be. Because remember, like, why'd you beat up those kids or what? Because they heard a frog. And here he's just kicking lizards left and right, and so he's changed over that time.
Sure.
And the arc would then be him caring about these things again, and just being the natural kind of person he is, like his father.
Right.
Dun, dun, dun.
Continuously getting in trouble for saving the little guy.
And Chris Pratt, too, let's face it. He's on a roll. He is on such a wave. The Lego Movie. And again, you've watched the Lego Movie, you get a ton of Chris Pratt because it's that kind of, hey, everybody, it's like a whimsical sarcasm. And he brings that to Star-Lord. And, and then next year he's in Jurassic World. Yeah. So, and he'll continue to be in Guardians, and he's still on Parks and Rec, right? So, yeah, this guy, man, oh, Manischewitz, he's working.
I think he did a wonderful job. I'm going to give Who Stole the Show for me, though, to Dave Bautista, who did Drax.
Yeah.
He was the one who was killing me the entire film. I was just dying about his little translation, about how, like, the moment when he was talking about it not going over his head.
I was just going to say, and nothing goes over my head. I'll catch it before.
Or how he was just laughing their entire crash landing. I was cracking up, hysterically laughing. I loved him so much. And then when I found out that he was really passionate about getting this role, he cried.
Yeah.
He cried when he found out. And I mean, I think that in general, him just being this really big, buff guy throughout the film and then having this realistic point of view is interesting and then being funny. But then to also hear that he was so excited about it and wanted to be in this movie so bad just really touched me. And I thought he did a great job. He took extra acting classes. Sure. He put in so much effort. And I think he was the one that out of anyone I think would have pulled me out of the group. And he did fit. He found his way in, and I really.
To be fair, I was curious as to how it was going to work out. I mean, you guys obviously know a little bit of his backstory. I don't imagine you guys being huge wrestling fans, but
no.
You know,
wrestling.
But you know, you could look at that and be like, oh, here's just another guy wanting to be The Rock. You know, is this going to work out? Is he a good actor? Whatever. And you know, he was good, and to me he goes a little bit uncredited, so I'm glad that you did actually bring him up. In terms of extra effort, what I love, he literally went back to wrestling as part, you know, he had big storylines and he wrestled and he got back into it, but it was all for a culmination to build up to this movie. And that's what's so great. But you can't, you know, wrestling fans, you can't just come back for like a day and be, you know, hey, I'm back. Let's promote the movie, have one fight. He went back before the end of 2013, all the building up, you know, to WrestleMania, which is in April, and then a couple months after. So he really put in his time to help promote this movie. And
the movie, the character is catered to his, let's call him strengths. I mean, I don't know how he would be in a romantic comedy, but in this movie they cater to his strengths, and he comes off fantastic. To your point, that line about things going over his head and things, and again, another character. It's so hard. He's another character that has an arc, and think about it's so hard when you have a movie. We have a main character and the supporting characters, but they're all together. But it's each character got their day in the galaxy, but they had their own arc. They became sort of a different person by the end, and that's how they ended up. They realized that they have a common goal and that they have a common good, that they can continue to go on through the galaxy to be our guardians, and I'm all for it.
I'm all for it too. Yeah. Let's see. We haven't talked about Rocket yet much. We've kind of mentioned, but you mentioned Demetri for you that he was one of your favorites from the comic book. Did that resonate as you watched it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that the comic book brings to light is that it's off color, and then when you have a talking raccoon that swears, and it's just funny. It's just funny.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is this movie for kids as much as it says it is? Because there's some lines in there of like, hey, this place is dirty. Oh, imagine if I had a
black eye.
Yeah, the ship.
You know, and I went to see it, and there was a lot of kids there, and a lot of kids on that line.
Teenagers. Like, where do you make that line?
They were like 8 years old, and they turned to their parents like, why is that funny?
Yeah.
They did not get it.
I would give it like a teenager line. Like, this could totally be it could totally be a teenager movie. It's an adult movie, but eight's too young.
There was definitely a lot of 8-year-olds that saw it with me.
I had kids. There were a lot of kids in the audience that I saw it with. But no, I mean, but Rocket Raccoon too. I'll say he was probably, if memory serves, he was even more off color.
Well, that's the great part. People really, you know, they love the sense of realism and the raunchiness. When he's walking, he just scratches his
it's great
raccoon nuts.
And there was a question as to whether or not they were going to keep that in. And he didn't think that they'd allow that, but it ends up being in the trailer. And the way the trailer's cropped, if you're not paying attention, but the trailer, as you said, was everywhere. So it didn't matter what movie I was watching, that trailer was on. So you get to, and I was like, oh my God, he's scratching his crotch as he's walking. Now, it may have taken me 3 times because I'm not looking at a raccoon's crotch initially, but I was like, that is hysterical. And even when you see it again in the movie.
And again, that's what's so great. It's not, you know, if you're not looking for it, it's not a big thing, but when you do catch it, it's just like, oh, that's a typical bro. That's a typical guy. When have you ever seen that? You know, it's the equivalent of like having fart jokes in the movie.
Right. Yeah. And it did it have any fart jokes?
I was just gonna say, I'm like, it could have. That's the thing.
Yeah, it could have. Yeah.
Maybe it got cut for time, but it could. this was the type of movie that there could have
Yeah.
been, and it would have worked.
And it would have, it would have worked.
Yeah.
So, but Rocket's a great character, and again, the movie does something great, and it's like almost like a toss away line where he says, where he's just going off, and he goes, "Yeah, everybody makes fun of me," and he goes, "Look at me." He goes, "I'm a mismatch of parts, and I was put together, and I didn't ask to be this," and he's almost like a Frankenstein raccoon. But again, when you see him and he talks, like, again, you just instantly sympathize and love the character, and you love that his muscle is a tree that says 3 words. It's like, how did these two ever end up together? Like, was he nesting in the raccoon?
Yeah, what are you talking about? They are natural partners.
JTE, what was your favorite character from the movie?
Wow, that's a tough one. I would probably say Rocket, just because maybe you guys have been praising this film a lot, and I'm totally with you. It's a really fun film, but I did have some flaws with some of the character development as far as like the motivation, especially with like Chris Pratt. I feel like are we talking spoilers at all?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We're all spoilers.
Okay, I just wanted to make
spoilers.
sure. I know you're talking the movie. One problem I did have was like the end of the movie when he's like holding on to the gem and he sees his mother, which is a callback to the first scene of the movie. I felt like we never really got that kind of struggle throughout the film, like exactly what it was trying to say. So I thought that was a little sloppy. Also, Zoe Saldana's character, when she basically goes after the ruby or whatever she's trying to get, and
The Infinity Stone?
Yeah, the Infinity Stone. You're thinking she's on a mission for Ronan, or whatever that guy's name is. Ronan.
Yep.
And basically, as they're walking to prison, she gives all this exposition. She's like, "Oh, I was turning on him because this happened, this happened, this happened." And I was like, wow, they really just kind of shoehorned that in.
Why'd she tell them?
But here's the thing, again, to me, it worked because it's one of those things. Is she just doing it to buy their trust?
Right. I felt the same way you did. I'm like, because I felt, it's weird. I felt like the way both of you had, because it just came out so like naturally and quick. It was almost like she was trying to buy their trust, and I'm like going, "Oh, she's lying."
Yeah.
Like that was my initial thought.
The information came a little too easily.
Very quick.
And to your point about his motivation, I mean, as to the connection of the mother, the whole notion is that he's got this Walkman.
Yeah.
And the tape, because that's the tape that his mom loved.
Yeah.
And his whole thing, and what people are praising it, and it's throughout the movie, is that he, out of all these people, he still retains his humanity, right? Oh, what is that? That's a metaphor. It's all these human things that he does that nobody else understands because they're not necessarily tied into the human culture, but he is.
Yeah.
And these things are what remind him that he is still a human being, JT.
And again,
Point
I will
taken,
go
point
with
taken.
I always like the recall framing device, and if it's used wisely, because it's such a at the beginning of the movie, let's face it, we meet a kid, mother's dying, there's that thing with the hand, he doesn't reach over, mom dies, he goes outside, gets abducted by aliens. What? It's like, okay, where the hell? I mean, I just saw this tragic thing. Now he's abducted by aliens. My last thought is that recall, that we're going to do that again. Like, I'm not so much thinking about what happened in the hospital at the beginning. So when it comes back again, I'm like going, okay, now this is where our character arc is. Very cleverly done, for me anyways. I thought it was great. It was a good emotional scene. And again, it just recalls back to the Walkman, his humanity, and now he's learned to be, I can't miss the opportunity of reaching out and helping or giving solace. I like that. And when a recall like that is used, to me it's always great because sometimes it's cheesy. How many times have you been to a movie where you see something happen at the beginning and you go, okay, that's going to come back up again.
It's a bookend.
You know it's going to come back up again. This movie, I didn't, maybe call me naive.
I knew the hand was a bookend. I knew that part
come.
was coming back. I didn't know if his mom was coming back. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew that hand imagery was coming back. So I have a question, or maybe you guys can convince me the other way around. My only problem with it actually came from Nebula, the sister. She was the one who every time she came out, I wanted to know your perspective because I didn't know where she was coming from. Was it just like a jealous sisterly place the whole time? Because she was very aggressive and very over the top, and I understand she had been tortured and who knows what for years. But every time I was just like, why do you...
Do you want my simple answer or the long answer?
Both.
Simple answer, women.
No.
I don't understand them.
Yeah.
No, but
That's what you chalk it up to.
No, but on a more serious note, yeah, I think for me there was that jealousy factor, and right off the bat, Gamora steps up and says, I'm gonna do this, and after that you could see her face scrunch immediately of like, what are you doing? I'm more than capable of doing this,
Right.
And she even steps up, and he's like, shh, let her talk.
Yeah.
Okay, go do it.
She, I think, was just a little too much for me. Like, in the route of this was a fun movie, she belonged in kind of the more serious version that was trying to be dark all the way through.
And I sort of kind of think that the movies... I actually think that... I'll say that I thought the character might have been a little bit underutilized. Now, that could be because I'm a big fan of Karen Gillan. I loved her as Amelia Pond in Doctor Who. So I really liked seeing her, and I thought she was great. And she had the physical attributes, and she could do the fight scenes and all. I almost thought that she was a little bit underutilized because she represented, at least for Zoe Saldana's character, she represented that conflict that you had to get by. And although they had their great fight scene, I had hoped for maybe a little bit more to see her come back. But all in all, I think that her as a villain was supposed to be a little bit like darker and be that force that Zoe Saldana has to contend with, and that they were going to square off.
I got was that she was supposed to be the parallel to Gamora. Like she was supposed to be the
flip side
other.
Of the coin,
like they both
Joker
had the
to Batman.
same. Yeah, exactly. They both had the same upbringing. They both went through the same thing, and she's the one who kind of failed and got sucked into it and is now more or less brainwashed. But it just wasn't really being clarified for me.
Okay.
Because there was that. Was she just the other side? Was she the villain? And we already have two villainous characters who are completely utilized as well, that are just glimmers that we get. So that's where I was getting a little lost on the dark side.
Was I the only one that thought, the other way I looked at her as a villain as well is sometimes a villain gets so wrapped up in their anger that they get in the way of themselves of seeing any goodness in them. Because there were times where Zoe Saldana would say, we're sisters, we should be working together. Can't you see this is bad? And there was almost the glimmer that she understood, but she had so much pent-up anger, she just couldn't let it go. Yeah. And she continued to be the villain. She didn't change over. And I sort of kind of like that as well. But in Marvel, that happens a lot with villains. They're just so angry. They get in their own way of seeing any kind of kindness towards anybody, and that's why they're a villain.
Yeah,
Doc Ock is a great example.
That's true.
Right.
Let's start talking about more specific scenes in terms of acts and things like that. I really loved, for lack of a better term, the collector sequence. One of the things I will credit them for, they took very little breaks and breaths, but it worked. As soon as something, we've moved on, and then within 5 minutes, even just time within the movie, it's not like you'd cut to something and there'd be a passage of time. Everything was just, it was almost working in real time to a lesser degree.
Once they got to wherever we needed to be, yeah, totally.
So I appreciated that very much.
Are we doing favorite scenes?
Sure. What's your favorite scene?
A breakout of prison. The breakout of prison was just so much fun, especially in even how they started off with the plan, but the plan's already in motion because you have Groot in the background just moving the action forward and being comedic and being visually interesting. I was just this setup for what is about to happen is so good because the audience knows it's happening and they don't, and you're just and you're getting pumped and they're just planning that build up. And then how they did it with, the team kind of finally getting together and each playing their own part. Right. And it being assembled almost organically instead of this is your job, this is your job, this is your job. It was these are the things we have to do. and then they all figured out how they were going
Right.
to play into this team.
And
it
it
wasn't
goes
like
to
you're
that real-
responsible for this. It was like, oh, and now everyone's going, and you're going to make this work because you have to.
Right.
And you know, to my point, it wasn't Shawshank Redemption. It was to your. It was
happened.
okay, Groot. I'm gonna do it. You know, here's the plan. 2 seconds later, we're in. It's
And what's great about it too is while he's going off doing what he is, so our heroes are our band of merry men and women
Are plotting.
They're plotting, and they're like going. So we as the audience, we're hearing them plot, so we know they're foreshadowing what's supposed to happen. And yet here's Groot putting things in action. It's like they're not done figuring out what the hell they're supposed to be doing.
and what I love, you know, both visually, but also with the language, they're talking, and for the most part, it's sort of meaningless, except for the fact of we got to get this one thing last.
Right.
And visually, they obviously enforce it where okay, that's the last piece of the puzzle, but wait, he's getting that first.
And of course, there's the punchline to it all. What do we do with the leg? I didn't need the leg. I just thought that would be hysterical. And they're like, what? He goes, isn't that hysterical? And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty fucking funny. I'm like, and then when he tried to do it again, yeah, we're going to need
The eye.
The eye.
The
Yeah,
eye.
we're going to need that guy's eye.
No, we don't need the eye. You're fine.
Fool me once. But it's a great punchline that goes to a great scene because again, I'm thinking, what the hell does he need a leg for? What do you need all this stuff? But Rocket is 2 steps ahead until Groot starts it all. And that is a great scene. Really, really great scene.
That's my favorite. It definitely takes the cake.
How about you?
I did like the collector sequence, you know, that whole fight, because again, we just kind of we dive right into it. Things explode, and then Dave Bautista, just all these things. Everyone just goes rogue,
Right.
you know, and you know, even Peter, right?
Peter Quill.
Quill?
As he's having his moment, but then they turn around and then there's a fight. in the bar. They
right,
never get a
right.
moment of just peace and tranquility. That this is a ragtag group.
Yeah, absolutely. My one thing with the collector, and I had to, I read about it actually because it was in the Easter eggs, and there's like 26 of them.
There's so many.
But what I didn't quite understand was the Karina Walters
Her
carrot.
draw towards the Infinity Stone?
Yeah, it was like it wasn't until after I read a little bit about her what was going on there. But to me, I was like, what the hell is she doing and why? Like, you know, and what is that going to do? And that was my only thing. But, you know, and I read about it later on. So it was fine, but it was one minor little thing. The explosion was awesome.
So what was the
happened in that
explanation?
scene. Well,
To me, it's a little bit of a Pandora's box, a need for getting out of
Yeah.
release of maybe possible suicide.
according to the comic book world, and actually, apparently she has Karina Walters is not only the servant to the collector, but his daughter as well. Which
That was
I
the same
didn't-
name.
yeah.
Carol name. They didn't establish if it was actually
Right.
his daughter, but he in the comics did have a daughter of that first name.
Right, and Karina serves as an ambassador to anyone who wishes to speak to her father and judges their needs. And then it just goes through this whole, the collector orders Karina to seek out the most powerful beings in the universe, but it doesn't necessarily say she's been in servitude. And this was her way of, like, she was committing suicide.
We got the in servitude out of the
Right.
movie where it was like, look at what I did to my last assistant, which to me negates the whole daughter argument.
Right.
I think it was a call to, obviously, for her name, but I don't think that they established that that's who she was, and I don't
Right.
think that's who she was meant to be. I think it was, she's basically a slave girl and wanted out, and
Yeah.
this was her. I think what I put in my head is that she has some knowledge of what he does and what these things are and the power they possess. And there are a few people who do know what Infinity Stones can do.
Sure.
And she's one of them.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that. Well, I didn't know exactly what the Infinity Stone would do if somebody touched it. And
I
then
still
we
don't
found-
understand the Infinity
Yeah.
Stone myself.
Yeah.
It's one of those MacGuffins that I just got
Well, there's
behind right off
Infinity
the bat.
Stones. This is just one of the stones.
Right.
Yeah,
We've
Different
seen them in
colors.
other, yeah, exactly.
it'd be
And
the
we've seen them in other movies, yes. Mhm.
yeah.
So,
Like the, what's it called? The blue one. That's an Infinity Stone.
the blue one from, is that
Thor.
That was oh good
Starts
God.
with a T, I think.
Not the Tesseract.
We'll think about this because I'm blanking out.
No,
at the
I think
moment.
the Infinity Stones.
There's a blue one, there's a green one, there's a
Infinity
red
Stone
one.
mix-up. And then
This is
I'm
the stuff
blanking.
that I just mark up to being a MacGuffin
It's
in
not
every one of these.
There's an explanation.
Well, it's
No, there
Thanos'
is an
blue, too.
explanation, just like there's always an explanation with the MacGuffin, but it's just the thing that ultimately we're after, that everyone else is after as well.
Well, Thanos ends up at some point getting them all, and there's this big yellow glove. Now, this is a big thing at Comic-Con. I saw so many people walking around with the yellow
the glove
that had the stones and then, like, say, the knuckles or whatever. So, but it is a MacGuffin. It's what's going to perpetuate our story, and I believe even go into the Age of Ultron, the Avengers movie. I have to say, I did love the, I love the breakout scene. I love the Peter Quill at the beginning, the dancing scene, and the I'm Star-Lord, man. I love that stuff. One scene, another great thing for me in this movie was it never ceased to make me go, whoa. It never, and I love that in this kind of a movie. And the scene that sort of kind of did it, we were talking before we started recording here, Groot had so many powers that he would just pull out of a branch or whatever. And one of my favorite scenes is when they're in that dark cave and the lights come out. And again, that comes much later in the movie. And again, when you're still able to get me to go, oh, that's cool. After I've seen a ton of cool stuff before it, I'm like, oh, the movie continues to amaze me. And I really like that scene because everybody's like looking... Like, what else can you do?
Exactly. And it was so sweet because not only was it visually beautiful and it did create like this big breath of like them being friends, and it set up them having that conversation of like mattering to each other and like put that in a, warm setting where you could feel like emotional, sentimental. But on top of that, all of his powers like increased his character growth too.
Absolutely.
Like, being that they only give him one line, like how you establish a relationship with him is that he is the muscle who can beat up anything or anyone.
Yeah, he's an ant that can walk a little bit faster.
And then on top of that, they give him like the big doe eyes at certain points. But they also give him like, they give him the muscle and they give him like the home, the shelter, the light, the fire, the encompassing like womb bush thing. I don't know.
And again,
but it layers his character.
Totally layers his character. Totally gives him an arc when he sacrifices himself, not just for Rocket but for the entire team. And Rocket says, "Groot, you can't do that. You're gonna die. You can't do that." And again, I loved Rocket's. Like, Rocket was in such despair when after that happened, and to see Rocket break down like that, because up until that point he wasn't that character at all. And it's a great scene. And again, when you're still able to drag, it's a 2-hour movie, it's a big commercial summer special effects extravaganza, explosions, whatnot, look great, but when you're still able at the 1.5-hour mark, still able to make me go, wow, that's cool.
They were making me feel that way at like the tour mark when you get Groot coming back and dancing in his little pot.
Oh my God,
at the end.
Awesome.
Speaking of that, let's talk about the music, because it is so central to everything. And what I like about it is their reveals come at the perfect time. I was wondering when's that gift gonna come out. And they had
You knew it was coming. You got the tease in the middle, the open drawer. Actually, I think it might have even been teased twice.
Yeah, it was kind of teased throughout, but I thought they'd surely kind of open it up beforehand. And obviously the real reveal is amazing. Is it's the second
awesome
mixtape.
Mixtape 2, part 2. Yeah.
Also, I was like so excited because I was convinced, like, maybe I've seen too many movies. I don't know, but I'm always like, oh, I know it's in the present. And I was like, it's going to be a picture of his mom and his dad and him, and we're going to know who his father is.
So lame.
100%. Shut up.
So lame.
I was 100% convinced that was what it was going to be. And so when it was a mixtape, instead of being let down and being wrong, I was like, so much better than my present. Like,
it was great.
100 times better. And now I want to listen to it.
Did you guess it? Did you see that coming? I didn't
I didn't know what it was in it.
Did you think it was a family thing? Did you guess? Did you try?
I thought it would be some letter. Could have been a picture. Could have been something. I could have been like an item, like
I thought it was something related to his dad. I was like convinced it was a dad thing.
Let me ask you this though. I'm very curious. Do you guys know the songs that were pre-selected beforehand versus stuff that they had to go with perhaps after the fact? You know how when you like really want a specific song, but then like you just can't get the rights, so you find something that's similar, and you know, for an audience, you don't. Do you
have an example?
I do. Well, I have examples from other movies, but I couldn't find anything specific to this movie, and partly because I think they're holding on to it for dear life because everything that was in it seems so fitting that it's one of those things.
They want to be geniuses.
They want to be geniuses where like we had it all along.
They knew. I know that a lot. This doesn't pertain to the song choices, but rather the soundtrack. A lot of the soundtrack was created, before the filming. So normally, you know, the composer will get the film and compose to it, but in this way it worked the opposite, where they're writing music before.
Yeah,
that's about it. But as for the soundtrack, mostly what I was taking away is I'm going to buy it. Yeah, and I liked to dance to it a lot.
Well, the music was done on purpose. James Gunn's whole deal on the music and what it was all about was it was more of a connection to make Peter Quill more human. It was something that the audience was going to relate to. You know, and again, when you think about it, everything at the very beginning happens sort of fast. We meet the kid, his mother dies, you're like, holy shit, and then he gets abducted. And you don't really, it's sort of kind of off-putting because it's two different genres in one, like, you know? And then when we see him on the planet, and number one, he takes out the Marty McFly, you know, the Walkman, he puts it on his head. And when it plays that song, you're just automatically, and then when he starts dancing, you're in. And it gives, Peter Gunn he wanted Quill to stand out as a human. And the music, as it plays throughout, it's one thing that a whole audience can get.
And it's self-referential. I mean, Footloose.
Yeah, right.
You know, you can't help but dance.
No, and he again, I just think that with it played such an integral part because it's something that the movie-going audience gets. You know, they may not have these albums or whatnot,
and
but
it's universal.
It's very universal.
You know what I mean? The jokes, physical jokes, obviously can translate any language. Verbal jokes, not necessarily so much, but music can also transcend. You don't need to know, like, Hooked on a Feeling. Yeah, as an American, you understand Hooked on a Feeling, but even so, you can hear the melody of it and just be like, oh, that's a cool song.
Right. Yeah, and again, Hooked on a Feeling is such an old. It's not being played in the top 10 today, you know, and a song like that.
I think it's number 3 to Katy Perry, whatever song we're on currently.
So yeah, it's just you buy into it. It's so universal that it gives an audience something to latch onto that's nostalgic, and you believe in Peter Quill that much more because he's the one that's surrounded by all these aliens. And how do you make this wackiness, this universe? How do you ground it more for a human-going audience? Well, you put in human music that people are gonna. Number one, you can sort of kind of tap your toes to it, but for a lot of people, it becomes, oh my God, I remember hearing that song in the 70s or the early 80s. Oh, I get it. Oh, well, that's great. I haven't heard that in a long time.
And it's also believable to the fact of he's listened to this so many times and yet still appreciates it and loves it. He's listened to it just the right amount of time where he's not still bored of it.
Right. Yeah.
That's the best part to me because, you know, I'm sure you guys are the same. You guys have a CD or I don't know if you have a Walkman. God bless you if you do still.
I have an iPod.
But anyway, how many times you get bored of the same song, you know, if you've listened to it, no matter how great it is, eventually there's that law of diminishing returns that comes into effect. But it hasn't hit him because he's...
But let me throw this back to you, right? And this is the great thing about music. You're right. Sometimes you can over-listen to an album for a while, but one of the great things about music is, so you put it away, you start listening to other records, and then you might be going through your iPod, your iTunes, whatever it is that you have, and then you go, oh, I haven't heard this in a while. and then you'll play the album and you're gonna go, oh, you know what? I want to hear more of them. And with Peter Quill.
Well, intrinsically for him, I don't think that's the case. He's not. He hasn't gotten mixtape number 2 and 3 or 4 yet.
But it's also his tether back to what was
exactly
his
that.
life.
That's the main thing. It's like there's a different. Like this isn't just like music to listen to. This is music that was his like world that he no longer has. So I don't think you really do get sick of it on that end. I
want to shift gears, if you guys don't mind, talking about the visual effects.
Sure.
Because to me, there's more of a transition now where things are so seamless that you don't really notice the visual effects versus not. And what I loved about this movie, we've been talking about Rocket, and whether it's the explosions or just space in general, it all looks seamless to me.
I agree. I think there's been a lot of backlash though. Like a lot of fans have been saying that like Rocket looked too like fake or something, and like people have been mentioning it, and I'm like, I thought it looked fantastic. I thought it blended really well. I thought that the actors that were present like on set interacted well, and the CGI or mix that they were using was working out great.
I thought Rocket was great. I thought the special effects, again, it's one of those things where you're continuing to show me things or bring me into a galaxy that I'm not familiar with. So again, another really cool scene is when they were coming up into the collector and there's that big skull nebula thingy, right? And I'm like going, oh, that's cool looking. And the way that they made it look with the colors, I mean, it was very ethereal, but it looked solid. And it was just a great scene. I felt when they're on Nova had a completely different feel from any other thing that was in the movie. It was very bright. It was very colorful. Actually, it was the one bright spot like in the movie, and it was done as a conscious decision, right?
And speaking of the colors, just in general, they used very primary colors, but they brightened them and made them more saturated. Like think about it, they used a lot of blues, a lot of reds and greens.
Yeah,
and just brought
primary
that up.
Colors.
And the only time where it got dark, literally, was when we saw our villains.
Right.
Because it was the blue against a black backdrop. So typically you want even that portion to be whiter against the black backdrop. But no, that wasn't the case. And so, but with them, they were all just very colorful.
Yeah, and again, I thought they used it.
It helps like a more screen. I mean, that brings some color to the screen every time.
True.
And that Drax is blue.
But again, you could make them darker versus they made them bright.
Yeah,
it's quite a bright green.
And again, it's different from what we've come to know from the Marvel universe, from the let's call it the Avengers universe. If there's another name for that, let us know. But we'll call it the Avengers universe, which this is set in. And you're right, like this band of characters, their colors are definitely different than, Captain America, it has to be red, white, and blue. Iron Man, we already know. The Hulk is green.
But it's also, think about the lighting, right? Just from...
It's much different.
If I was, let's say, lighting for Captain America, I'd pick different lights to use to make him look stronger, whereas this, you want to evenly light all of them, right? So you have to be judicious in how you do it, and you want to go even across their face. You don't necessarily, there's not a lot of shadows on their faces for the most part, right? Partly because maybe you don't want to deal with doing shadows on Groot and Rocket. I could definitely see that being a hindrance, but also because it's not that type of movie. No. And I guarantee if we did a side-by-side comparison of, the other Marvel movies to this, you could just see a visual lighting difference.
Oh, absolutely.
And we could speculate on picking apart which lights were used, HMIs versus Kinos versus, this to make that happen. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring the recall tool back to you because, and how you said that this just looks different. It looks different from what we've already seen, so it makes it look fresh. And you're like, how do you make this look fresh? Well, Guardians brings us brand new characters that we've never seen before. It makes a new type of a superhero movie. And by using color, by using various lighting effects, special effects, and of course the characters and how they're written, it gives us something fresh to look at. So that maybe now when we go back to the Avengers universe next summer, I don't think there's another superhero movie coming out of the Marvel universe in any case, it will look like it should, and hopefully it'll look different again because we've seen Guardians of the Galaxy and we know what's out there. But now Avengers.
Let me ask you this: Did you guys pick out any about? I know there's Howard in an earlier scene in the movie. Not obviously he's in the bump or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But he's early in the movie as well, and I read somewhere that there were other characters from the Marvel universe as well,
especially in the collectors, in the the collector cages.
Yeah, did you guys pick them out?
There's multiple. Well, we mentioned the one from Slither. There's also, I believe, one of the what were they called that came in the Avengers through the black hole.
They are the monsters that came through the hole in the Avengers is in one of them as well. I didn't see any.
There's a few things though.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually. That too is in one of the many.
JT, you got him.
There was a dark elf.
There was a dark elf too. Oh, the Chitauri. Oh, the Chitauri. Yep. Slither. There was the Slither slug. Cosmo the space dog was there. Let's see. The Tesseract, I believe, was there as well. And let's see. I forgot where we were. Rainy Day. Okay, those are the ones that the massive.
Those are the main ones. Yeah. What I think is interesting is how much we've talked about that this was a fun new movie, but I do want to point out that they didn't shy away though from putting their characters in danger. Like they had everyone have near-death experiences.
Absolutely.
Every character had moments where you thought that they couldn't come back. Like I was convinced multiple times that Drax was dead. Mm-hmm. Like I thought he was going to die just from the just from Groot putting his fingers up his nose. I thought his brains were going to come out. I thought he was going to be dead. No, but that is something that I just want to point out because as much as we're talking about this was fun-loving and the music and it was light and cheery, it wasn't like everything was perfect the whole time. They were still putting their lead characters in danger, near deaths, all of them.
There was vested conflict for the audience, and there was peril, and it was true peril. But again, I think that only works if you actually care about your characters. If you don't give a shit, you don't care what happens to them. But whether it's if you care for them, if they trip on a curb and they skin their knee, you're like, oh, So this movie had vested peril for each character.
Each one, and it wasn't always just Chris Pratt. It was each person or each.
Yeah, and Dave Bautista's
member.
fight. Again, I'm with you. I'm like, ooh, okay, this is getting really dark, and at any given time, somebody could have perhaps died.
Yeah, and I think he definitely used some of his wrestling techniques for that. And I think what was fun for me. I don't know if other people are interpreted this way, but I felt like he really and because in wrestling, yes, it's people call it fake. I just call it's scripted, right? Because it's not fake. Right. It's still real in the sense of they're going out and performing. But in that sense, he had it scripted where he just had to lose, and you could see the years of wrestling training in him where he just so wanted to beat this guy up but just couldn't. Yeah. And that to me was amazing. I thought he paid off really well, and they used his strengths at his best in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
now some of the other cool Easter eggs. Earlier I had mentioned Chomer Films, Peter Gunn getting his start there. Well, he put his mentor in the movie. I can't think of his name. Lloyd Kaufman, who I actually had the pleasure of meeting once. I interviewed with Lloyd Kaufman, who's the head of Troma. He was in the movie. He was in the prison scene, which is pretty cool. We also get Nathan Fillion. He has a small overvoice. He dubs the big blue guy in the prison scene. And then Howard the Duck is voiced by Seth Green, which I thought was pretty cool. So there's a Raiders of the Lost Ark reference. There were a couple of them, but I mean that whole thing
lots
when he
of
was
Kevin
stealing
Bacon references.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon.
Well, with Footloose.
Yeah, well, Footloose.
And just
but I love the trying to get the orb. Did remind me of Raiders of the Lost Ark and trying to how am I going to get this out of there? Even Rob Zombie provided his voice for the Ravager Navigator. Let's see, of Stan Lee, of course. Continuing.
Yeah, I mean, you guys caught him right off the bat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, how can you not?
I always start laughing, I think, before everyone else. not really, not before everyone else, but like I think he's so sweet. So like the moment he comes on, I'm like and then I'm like no one else in the theater's talking.
But they made it good because he's with the hot girl and it's like they played to it and they make a joke out of it. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, I didn't like his cameo in that.
Okay, Jesus, I forget.
It was at the graduation, and it's when
right.
Peter Parker arrives, and he's like, I feel like I know that guy.
All right.
And it's like, okay. Whereas this
one was much better.
What's that?
I said this one was much better.
This cameo was...
Well, let me ask you this, because I was reading this again. One of the Easter eggs are all the pop culture references from the 80s. Now, this was on the Milano, which is named Milano. Why?
Because of Melissa Milano. I just said Alyssa.
Yeah, who's Melissa?
That's her sister.
Right.
It's her actually second cousin.
There you go.
I watched Charmed. I know who she is.
So right there, so we have Alyssa Milano. Now, did any of you see the following? Because I did. There's a troll doll, a troll doll.
There's like 3 troll dolls.
Did you see the scratch and sniff sticker? I didn't see a scratch and sniff. I did not see the Alf trading card.
I didn't see that.
I saw a lot of trolls because they had them like he was like flying around when the spaceship was moving, and then he was like sitting on the mantle, and then he came out in the decoy orb. It's like so many troll dolls.
And this one I did see the Garbage Pail Kids trading cards. Like those are huge in like the 80s. So again, if you're looking and you find these things, the nostalgia really brings the humanity back into it, because these are all things that are earth grown. Like you can't mistake it for anything else. And again, I think one of the major strengths of this movie and why you end up caring so much for Peter Quill or Star-Lord.
Yeah. Let's talk about the marketing. Obviously now the culture of these comic book movies, just think about, we do the news every Wednesday. And we talk about on a regular basis either Star Wars or Batman or something,
or the Hunger Games,
and all these movies. And we also talk Jurassic. It's called Jurassic World, but part of the Jurassic Park series. And these movies, for discussion points, they might as well be coming out in 2030.
Yeah, I know.
Because it's so far away.
I know.
And
it's
yet every day, certainly every week, but sometimes every day, we have all this news. And so, to that respect, I want to talk about the marketing of this, because it was such a long build-up, and you praise it, obviously. For me, I walked away with like, wow, this is a movie that people really want to see. I have no idea what it is. I kept asking people, what the hell is this? Mm-hmm. They didn't have an answer. But it was just something to see. Every
time I saw the movie, and it didn't matter who I was with. Now, I was already familiar with the team. The comments from day one of seeing the teaser trailer was, I don't get it. Like, who are these people? What are they... Like, I don't...
And it was a comedy.
Yeah, that had some funny parts to it. But, again, where I thought Disney... And this is where Disney excels, is they literally... subliminally educated an audience to who the Guardians of the Galaxy are or what they might become to be. But by the time the movie came out, you sort of you had Star-Lord in your head, because I'm Star-Lord, man. That was in the trailer. You got to see that it was a little bit raunchy or raucous because he was doing this thing. That was in the trailer. You had the action with Rocket and Groot, and you had Zoe Saldana and Dave Bautista. They constantly bombarded us with these characters, and then when they did do sort of kind of a bait and switch, because there was a line in the trailer that John C. Reilly says, like, this might not be a good idea.
Yeah.
The trailers sort of kind of had it set up where you think that these guys are going to be on a mission, so to speak.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they were going to be sent by... You have to...
I thought they were a mission, or it was basically going to be like a parody of a comic book movie.
That's why I thought they were pre-assembled. I thought they were the Guardians of the Galaxy until the end. And obviously we find out, like, oh, you Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, right.
So I did not see that coming.
Yeah, but again, I think when you're preconditioned, that it built an excitement in such a good way that, by the time it came out... Oh, the other thing that they did too was article after article after article. I mean, leading up within the month.
Cost? That is the question.
Well, according, let's see, the production budget was 170 mil. That's estimated, and the total budget included hard drives and advertising 230 million, apparently. So that's a lot of spondulics right there. But again, they were feeding out video clips, they were feeding out news articles, they were feeding out
I've seen that tweeted photo of Chris Pratt shirtless at least 5,000 times.
Yeah, and there was that. There was videos about Chris Pratt bringing you through the Milano, or Meet the Guardians of the Galaxy, or 10 things you should know about Guardians of the Galaxy before going into the movie. I mean, Entertainment Weekly was having articles on it, and it just seemed that it was always there, where you can either see something on your internet, something on TV, something whenever you opened up whatever magazine.
And what I love, people, Vin Diesel really got behind the movie, right?
Sure.
Didn't necessarily have to, because, emotionally, in terms of how much time he's put in versus the others, he hasn't put in a lot. Seth Green, actually, he did a bunch of stuff as well. And again, what major impact is he in the movie,
He's at the very end, but Seth Green, to know Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm not self-proclaiming myself, but, there is if you've read Guardians of the Galaxy, you're a comic book lover, and you really are a geek if you know anything about these folks. So Seth Green doing it, we know Seth Green through Robot Chicken and everything, what he does and stuff, so it's no big surprise. I love how Vin Diesel shows up on those spring stilts to a premiere. Those. Yeah, and that to me is so cool. And he's wearing a T-shirt that says "I am Groot." That is like Hiddleston showing up to Comic-Con as Loki. You know what I mean? I mean, that is embracing something that's really cool. Kids can look up to him, and it only fans the fire for more fandom down the line. And it also helps that 90% tomato rating. It's a really good movie. I believe it got in the cinema score. So, the uninitiated, which is 95%.
I'm on board for giving it an A and giving it yes. I'm glad cinema score got it right.
Yeah. Yeah, so marketing really worked on this particular film. And again, I just go back to Iron Man when Paramount had that. Marketing. How do you make a superhero who's not of Spider-Man ilk or even X-Men or Wolverine? How do you get people to go? They did a great job, and it all starts from back there. Disney knows how they can push a button, and they know how to market a movie.
But to its credit, it's good. Because we don't necessarily do a lot of these movies, but the ones that just the marketing can be good, and then you see that movie, and,
so disappointing.
So ultimately it has to stand up, and today's day and age, word of mouth. One of the things that we sometimes talked about on shows when it's more prevalent than others is if Friday a lot of people go see it, but then there's that dip. Why is that? Well, because now social media. It used to be you can have a good first weekend and then you dip because it just wasn't good. But if it's not good, people will know Friday.
Friday or
by
Thursday
10 a.m.
I mean, it'll
be
interesting because we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out, and that's really hard to say really quickly, and how it's going to react to that, because I know people, and myself included, who want to see this twice or who have seen it twice.
I know some people that went to see it twice,
and now it's going to be competing with this big movie coming out Friday, or it just came out
today. Yeah,
and I'm wondering which one's going to hold up more, because that one's had a lot of criticism. This is getting praised. Everyone's hyped and excited, and
absolutely, and I agree with you. And it's what Guardians has going for it. Currently tracking trends, forecasting for whatever this is worth. Right now, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is looking to do between 40 and 45. And the same can be said about Guardians of the Galaxy, depending on whatever the drop is. Now, if it does 94, you're thinking like a 50% drop is going to be, help me out with the math here.
That's about 45. Yeah.
Now, a 50% drop or a 50% hold, water half full, half empty, it would be great. A 50% hold is great for any movie the following weekend. It's usually about, on average, high 50s, 60s, low 60s, around there. So now you get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you are correct. The reviews on it thus far haven't been the best. However, there haven't been that many kids' movies out either. And, you know, you've got the backing of like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, all these kid networks. They've been advertising the heck out of it. Again, another trailer I've seen a lot. It could give Guardians a run for the money. And if it were to win, it would just be, again, that pattern that has happened throughout the entire summer. I think it's sort of kind of unfair to some other movies that people have been calling Guardians the savior of the summer. You know, Godzilla opened up pretty well and did okay. X-Men did fantastic. You know, obviously Transformers has already crossed like the billion mark and such. And, you know, we've had Maleficent did very well.
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. You know, we've had movies that have done okay. They just haven't been able, like, we've been very saturated this summer. Every single week, there's been a movie as big as, if not a little bigger, than the movie that opened up before.
This sounds like such a cheesy thing to say. And we've had huge movies that have raked in big bucks. I don't think that we've had any movie make as many people as happy. Like, give them as positive feel. Like, people have coming out saying, like, that was a great movie, that was so good. But like, people are genuinely happy coming out of this. And
agree.
I think that's the difference.
I agree with you. You know, this to me is the most fun I've had at the movies this summer. And it's not to take away. I thought X-Men was an excellent movie, a good superhero movie, very well done. You know, I enjoyed Godzilla for what it was. Maleficent I enjoyed, but you're right. I walk out of this movie, coupled with the music, coupled with everything else, I go, God, I would see this again in a heartbeat. I had a lot of fun. This is what summer movies and Christmas movies should be, don't you think? I
agree, and you know that's the great part about it. You know, there's people who haven't seen the movie yet that will be perhaps going to see it, but the rewatchability, you know, there's a huge continued debate about rewatchability. Godzilla, loved it, and I would want to see it again, but I have to pick a time, right? Whereas this, like, okay, fine, 2 hours, let's go see it. There's a huge rewatchability factor.
Absolutely. And again, you get to, I think that part of it is you love the characters, but there's so much to look at as well. Now, we didn't talk about, like, let's talk box office a little bit. I mean, it opened up to 94.3 million. That, you know, biggest August, one of the biggest.
We should have just lied and said a million.
Yeah.
100 million. Yeah.
100 million. You know, the total domestic gross thus far, 134 million. And then the worldwide gross is looking over $200 million worldwide. So, you know, the movie is bringing in the bucks overseas as well. And again, I think it's longevity. Whether it's number one, that'll be, you know, to me, it's always fascinating. I love box office derby and prognosticating and forecasting. I think it'll be a lot of fun to see which one comes out on top. But let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, for some silly twist of fate, Guardians does not come out number one and it's number two. It's not because it's a bad movie. It's just because the next big thing that came out that's catering towards a specific audience where there haven't been that many kids movies. The kids are going to go, you know, they've called this a rebranding of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They are sort of kind of on a high as far as cartoon is popular again. It'll be interesting to see, but I think Guardians is still going to be the most fun I've had this summer.
I think so too. Any last thoughts before we head on out and wrap this up?
How did you? Did you see it 3D? Not 3D.
Not 3D. I tend to not 3D.
You tend to not 3D. Okay.
Not because of. But I think if I go see it again soon, I will go see it in 3D this time.
Yeah. It's not for me. It's honestly a preference. It tends to be a matter of time and whatever's available.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Type of thing. So, but yeah, I definitely want to see it in 3D.
Check it out. I mean, and try to find again. I got to promote the XD because I saw it in that premium large screen format, and there were scenes that looked beautiful, especially like the light scene.
Tell them to build one in the back screen. You know,
Yeah.
add it to the
I
back
will.
screening
Closer
room. We
to
keep
where I live.
raving about this. I don't have time to go down there.
Come on down. I
So far
invite you guys
away.
all the time.
Build it
I
in the
come to
screening
Encino
room for
all
me.
the time.
Let's pump
Come
it from
on
the
down.
studios. Let's build it into the screening room.
I'm
Got
telling
3D done.
Perfect.
Just
Look at that.
next week. Come
Next
on.
week.
Come on down. Come on down. It really. I thought for 3D, this movie, I thought that it really worked. Now on the flip side, a good friend of mine saw it in 3D, but just regular 3D, and he said, had I seen it in 2D, I don't think it would have mattered as much. So personally, I thought the large screen format worked really well. Colors were bright, and it looked 3D, and it didn't distract. Mm-hmm. It enhanced. So,
all right, Sarah, what about you?
My final thought?
Your final thoughts? Just life in general. It doesn't have to be a
Just
good
my
Guardians.
life in general.
Just Galaxy. We'll make that the.
Of what's going on in the galaxy. Honestly, I think that everyone's on board with saying this is a fun, fantastic movie. I could see this movie with anyone. I could see this movie with my best friends. I could see this movie on a date. I could see this movie with my family. I could.
You didn't
fantastic.
specify who it was, but what did your person that you kept nudging?
My friend.
Yes.
Well, besides the fact they were annoyed with me because I kept nudging them, dancing, loved it.
Well, is
Absolutely
this a
loved
person that doesn't like to dance, that wasn't into the music? Why were they annoyed? Why
Probably
weren't they
'cause I
just
was
joining?
Probably a little too amped about the movie.
Okay.
I'm going to put the blame on myself.
All
On
right.
this
So
one.
you've ruined someone's experience of Guardians of the Galaxy. Congratulations,
Maybe
JTE.
they'll go
What
see
are
it
your
again.
thoughts on this movie?
I agree with you guys. Overall, very fun. I think it did a great job of setting up the characters, and I'm really kind of looking forward to see where he could take it from here. Now that he's done basically a setup job, I really even James Gunn said he really wants to see what he does with sequels, and I'm thinking it's going to be even better.
All right, so we have that to look forward to. Thank you guys for joining us yet again on another Anatomy of a Movie. And this time, for the first time in history on Anatomy of a Movie, we get to promote where Demetri can be found on Twitter.
D-Movies at DMovies1701. Again, that's at DMovies1701. Follow me. Say hey.
And even though Sara Stretton does not have a Twitter, ain't no mountain high, ain't no mountain low, she'll be there. Just call.
I am Groot. By the way, Sarah, you look Groot today.
Oh, thank
And
you.
Phil, you did a Groot job leading.
Well, thank you. And you were Groot as always.
Thank you. And it was Groot meeting you, JT.
Thank you guys for joining us. We've got a good slate of movies coming up. We've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Into the Storm. That's next week. Just recently, we did Boyhood. We did Wish I Was Here.
We did Lucy.
We did Begin Again.
I was into
Movies
the
on
music. Did
movies
you
on
say,
movies.
a Most Wanted Man?
We're about to do a Most Wanted Man, so that's going to be a great movie to talk about. So lots of stuff coming up. You guys have been great. You guys have been spreading the word of Anatomy of a Movie.
Thank you.
So we appreciate that. That's the number one thing you guys can do in return for us. Thank you guys for being a great audience. Thank you guys for watching us yet again. And we had fun. And hopefully you had just as much fun like you did with the actual movie. We'll see you here for the next dissection.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.